Her daughter-in-law asked her to eat in the kitchen, at a table with no napkin, no wine, no name. Martha Ellison, retired librarian and widow, didn't argue. She walked back into the dining room, took the turkey and sat at the head of the table instead. Not one guest stopped her. Not even her son. By the time dessert was served, the silence around her had turned into something else entirely: respect. She had waited her whole life to be seen, and tonight she made sure she was. I'm curious, where in the world are you joining us from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed for all the latest updates. From the moment I received the invitation, I felt the sting of what was to come. This wouldn't be a friendly dinner. It arrived by mail, not text or phone call. That was the first sign. A crisp cream envelope. My name typed in a sterile serif font. No Mom, no Martha, just Mrs. Ellison. Cold. Formal. The kind of thing you send to someone you tolerate, not someone you love. I turned it over in my hands like it might whisper more to me, if I held it long enough. I even sniffed the paper. It smelled like perfume I'd never wear. Inside, a neat little card with gold foil edges invited me to an evening of celebration at Lucy and David's home. No mention of what we were celebrating, no warmth in the wording, no handwriting, just the kind of thing that feels more like an obligation than a joy. I read it 3 times before placing it face down on the kitchen table. I should have been used to it by now. Lucy has always had a knack for making me feel like the potted plant in the corner, technically part of the space, but not someone you talk to. Ever since they got married, there's been this invisible line she drew in the sand. And David, God bless him, walks it like a tightrope, smiles when she smiles, nods when she speaks. I can't blame him entirely. He's torn. I'm his mother. She's his wife. Still, it hurt. I called him once about 6 months ago, just to say hello, to see how he was doing. Lucy answered, and before I could say 2 words, she told me he was busy, hung up, and he never called back. That's the kind of warmth I've come to expect. But this invitation, it felt like something was changing, or trying to. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was an attempt to smooth things over. Maybe Lucy was growing up, softening. Or maybe I hated that my mind even went here. It was a trap, a performance. Something to parade in front of friends, a show of family unity with the matriarch in attendance, appearances. Still, I said yes. I told myself it was time to stop imagining slights and start building bridges. I chose a soft navy blouse I'd saved for something nice. I even had my hair done. There was hope in me, reluctant and small, but there, maybe this time would be different. The drive over was quiet, just the sound of the road humming under my tires, and the voice in my head telling me to breathe, smile, and stay calm. I parked across the street, my fingers trembling slightly, as I reached for the gift I ride, a modest orchid, Lucy's favorite, or at least that's what she told me once during a rare kind moment years ago. The front door was already ajar, music spilling out into the twilight, laughter, voices, the kind of sounds that say we've already started without you. I stepped inside, heels echoing on the polished floor, and the air shifted. The dining room came into view first, and there it was. The table, set beautifully of course. Lucy's nothing if not meticulous. Crystal glasses, layered plates, candles that flickered in the air-conditioned hush. But it wasn't the decor that caught my breath. It was the seating. 8 chairs, 7 were already occupied. The 8th was tucked away, half an arm's length from the rest, with no place card, no wine glass, no napkin folded in a rose shape. Just a plain chair, like someone dragged it in from the kitchen at the last minute. And that's when I realized I wasn't really invited to dinner. I was being put on display. I had always been a gracious guest, but tonight, something about the way Lucy treated me didn't sit right. Lucy opened the door with a smile that stopped at her teeth. She didn't lean in for a hug, didn't say hello. Her eyes slid to the orchid in my hand like it was a grocery receipt. "Oh," she said flatly. "Just put it somewhere." I stood there for a second, then set it on a small table near the entryway. No thank you. No eye contact. She was already turning away, her heels clicking toward the living room, leaving me behind. Inside, the party was already in motion. Laughter spilled from every corner. Glasses clinked. People who hadn't seen me yet, or didn't want to, clustered near the wine bar. I recognized a few faces from past events, all work friends of David's. They looked at Lucy like she'd hung the moon. I hovered near the edge, clutching my purse, waiting for anyone to acknowledge me. A man glanced my way, then looked past me. Two women whispered to each other and laughed. Not a cruel laugh, just the kind that doesn't include you. 10 minutes passed before David emerged from the kitchen, holding a tray of shrimp skewers. He smiled when he saw me. A real smile, but it faltered. "Hey Mom," he said, shifting the tray to one hand so he could lean in for a quick hug. "Glad you came." Before I could answer, Lucy's voice floated from across the room. "David, don't let those get cold." He gave me an apologetic look. "I'll come find you in a bit, okay?" And just like that, he was gone again. The dining room table was a masterpiece. Candles flickering, glassware sparkling, place cards lined like a wedding rehearsal. Every chair had a name. Every setting had a story, except one. Mine. A plain chair sat half a foot from the others. No place card, no napkin, no wine glass. It looked like it had been dragged in from the garage. Lucy raised her glass and cleared her throat. "Thank you all for being here tonight. We're just about ready to serve." Then she looked at me directly, without blinking. "Martha, would you mind eating in the kitchen?" Her voice was syrupy. "We ran out of room, and well, you'll be more comfortable in there. You don't mind, do you?" Someone chuckled. A man added, "Kitchen's where the best food is anyway." It landed like a slap. I nodded and smiled. Years of practice. The kitchen was spotless. On the island sat a small plate, already portioned, already cooling. A single fork. No candle. No cloth napkin. Just a tall glass of water and silence. I sat on a wooden stool, the kind that creaks under the weight of dignity. From the dining room, laughter erupted. Silverware scraped against plates. Glasses clinked. Toasts were made to things I wasn't part of. I took a bite. It tasted like nothing. My stomach was too tight. My throat too dry. I thought about the birthdays I'd planned, the holidays I'd spent alone, the voicemails I stopped leaving, the invitations that never came. David hadn't even looked for me. I used to imagine he didn't notice, that Lucy made decisions without him, but now I wasn't so sure. Now I saw that silence had its own kind of cruelty. Nobody stopped her. Not the guests. Not David. Not even me. The kitchen light buzzed overhead, too white, too exposed. I sat with my back to the wall, hands resting in my lap, fork untouched. They hadn't set a place for me at the table, and for the first time, I saw it clearly. They never. As I stared at the empty stool across from me, the silence pressed in like a dare. How much longer will I let myself be invisible in my own family? I should have walked into the kitchen and quietly accepted my fate. But instead, something inside me snapped. The stool beneath me groaned faintly as I shifted. My fork rested on the edge of my plate, untouched since the first bite. Through the cracked kitchen door, I could see them, the golden circle of light around the dining table, faces animated, voices rising with laughter. Lucy glowed under the chandeliers, basking in the attention. She was in her element, the perfect hostess with the practiced laugh and the charming tilt of her head. She didn't glance once toward the kitchen. I stared through that narrow opening, hands clenched in my lap. My chest felt tight, but it wasn't sadness this time. It was heat, a low burn that had started in my belly and was climbing slowly, like smoke curling around a flame. How many times had I let this happen? Not just here. Every holidays, birthdays, even hospital rooms. I'd been the afterthought, the extra. The one you invite because not inviting her would look worse. Lucy had made an art of dismissing me with a smile. And David, he let her. Every time I looked down at the plate, then back toward the sound of my son's laughter. The sharp edge of betrayal bit into my ribs. I could feel it now, really feel it. No more numbness, no more excuses. There was something feral in me, something I'd buried for too long under politeness and patience and prayer. Something that whispered, You don't have to take this anymore. My fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. The idea of returning to that stool, of swallowing down another insult like it was dinner, made my stomach turn. If I went back to pretending, I'd never stop. This would be my place forever. The kitchen, the background, the silence. No, not tonight. I rose slowly, pushing the stool back with the soft scrape of wood against tile. My heart beat louder than the voices in the dining room. I moved toward the door, heels steady on the floor, hands no longer shaking. I paused in the doorway and looked in. Lucy was holding court, mid-story, laughing in that high, clipped way she did when she wanted the attention to stay on her. Her hair caught the light just right. Her hands fluttered gracefully over her wine glass. The room was wrapped. She didn't notice me. That would change. The anger in me wasn't a wildfire. It was colder, cleaner, a decision, a line drawn not in sand, but in stone. I wasn't going to cause a scene. I wasn't going to scream, but I wasn't going to disappear either. Not anymore. I stepped forward, letting the light from the dining room hit my shoulders. My chin lifted slightly. My pulse pounded, but my face remained calm. There was nothing to announce, nothing to defend, just one simple truth. I belonged at that table. I scanned the room once, slowly. Several heads turned. A few brows lifted. One woman looked at me, then at Lucy, then back again with a small surprised blink. Good. I took another step, quiet but firm. And as I reached the edge of the dining room carpet, my mind was already made up. This time, I wouldn't be the one left standing in the shadows. This time, I would be the one in control. I wasn't asking for permission anymore. I grabbed the turkey and I walked out of the room. The moment my heels crossed from tile to carpet, the room shifted. Not in volume, but in tension. The laughter didn't stop. Not immediately, but it thinned, like a song being faded out mid-note. Eyes turned, forks paused mid-air. I felt the weight of them all. Curious, confused, unsure of what they were seeing. I didn't flinch. Lucy was mid-sentence, but her words stalled the second she saw me. Her lips parted, the smile still frozen there like something painted on. I walked right past her. No nod, no acknowledgement, just air. The turkey was the centerpiece, perfectly browned, golden, glistening with rosemary sprigs, and citrus slices like jewelry on display. I reached out and with both hands, lifted it from the platter. Gasps fluttered across the table like startled birds. One man dropped his fork. A woman let out a quiet, "Oh my God." I turned, slow and deliberate, and carried the turkey to the head of the table. Lucy's seat, the one carved slightly higher than the others, the one with the folded napkin still untouched, the crystal goblet brimming with wine. I sat down. I could feel Lucy's eyes boring into the side of my face. She hadn't moved. Not yet. I didn't wait for her. With calm, practiced hands, I began slicing the turkey, each movement steady, surgical. I passed the first plate to the woman on my right, a petite brunette, who blinked at me as if I'd materialized out of a dream she didn't like. "Dark or white meat?" I asked softly. She muttered, "White," and took the plate with both hands like it might explode. I moved to the next guest, then the next. With every serving, my hands grew steadier, my spine straighter. The silence thickened, but I welcomed it. It wasn't discomfort I heard. It was awe, disbelief, recognition. Lucy still hadn't spoken. When I reached her seat, I paused. Then I calmly bent down, set a small portion of turkey on a side plate, and placed it gently on the floor beside her chair. The message was clear. Lucy stared at the plate on the floor as if it were a snake coiled at her feet. David stood slowly, eyes wide. "Mom, maybe we should." I didn't even look at him. "You're welcome to sit, David," I said, voice low but firm. "There's enough for everyone." He hesitated, mouth slightly open, hands limp at his sides. He sat. Across the table, wine glasses trembled in nervous hands. Someone coughed. Another guest pretended to look for something in their purse, but no one said a word. No one dared. Lucy stood motionless, her fingers clenched around the back of her chair. She looked from me to the floor, then to David, then back to me. Her lips twitched. I took a sip from her wine glass, now mine, and met her eyes fully for the first time that night. She blinked, just once, but in that blink, I saw everything. The disbelief, the fury, the crack in her perfect armor. She'd built this stage for herself, and I had stolen the spotlight with a single walk across the floor. Her voice, when it came, was thin and brittle. This isn't. She stopped. Tried again. Lucy straightened, her mouth trembling with rage, and spat the words like venom. This isn't over. As I looked around the room, I realized no one was speaking. The silence was deafening, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was empowering. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the faint ticking of the clock on the mantel, the kind of silence that doesn't just fill a space, it redefines it. Every guest sat still, their hands hovering over utensils, unsure if they should eat or wait, speak or stay quiet. I didn't hesitate. I lifted another slice of turkey onto a plate, and passed it down the line. My fingers didn't tremble. My eyes didn't waver. I had never been more certain of anything in my life. Each motion was deliberate, quiet, unshaken. I was no longer the woman waiting to be included. I had included myself. Lucy hadn't moved. Her arms were crossed now, and she stood like a statue behind her empty chair. Her eyes followed my every move, but I gave her nothing. Not a glance, not a word. She tried, of course. At first it was a barely audible then a muttered, "Well, I guess some people just help themselves." A fake laugh, brittle and sharp, slipped from her lips like cracked glass. I didn't look up. Another plate, another smile for a guest too stunned to decline it. She tried again. "Oh, she's serving dinner now. How charming." I refilled someone's wine glass. Across the table, one of the women, gray hair tucked behind one ear, pearls resting lightly at her collar, offered me a gentle nod. Not pity, not shock, approval. Her husband cleared his throat, then lifted his fork and took a bite. That broke the spell. Slowly, carefully, conversation began to rise again, softer, more cautious, but directed toward me. Someone asked how I'd seasoned the turkey. Another complimented the cranberry chutney, asking if I made it. I hadn't, but I smiled and said, "Not this time." They laughed. Lucy's face was turning a deeper shade of red now, the kind that sits high on the cheekbones when pride begins to blister. She hovered, waiting for someone. David, most likely to fix what had unraveled in front of her. David did stand. Eventually, he cleared his throat, voice low. "Maybe we should just take a moment. Reset." I met his eyes. "No need to reset. Everything's going just fine." He hesitated, sat back down. Lucy blinked, then blinked again, like she couldn't process what she was seeing, and I kept serving, pouring, smiling, taking up space. I was always told to tiptoe through. The room didn't belong to Lucy anymore. It had shifted. Subtle but absolute. Her perfect dinner party, so meticulously orchestrated, was now slipping through her fingers like sand. No tantrum, no shouting, just being ignored. For someone like her, that was the cruelest cut of all. I looked down the table. People were eating now, murmuring between bites. The spell had fully broken. They had adjusted, adapted, moved on. Only Lucy had. She stood behind her chair, arms still crossed, eyes burning holes into the back of every head, but no one turned. No one rose to defend her or offer her a new seat. She was stuck in a spotlight that had turned cold, and I, still calm, still seated, was basking in something far rarer than applause, dignity, control. For the first time in years, I wasn't just reacting, I wasn't making peace or keeping quiet. I was choosing how this story unfolded, one plate at a time. I poured myself another splash of wine, took a sip. The crystal glass felt lighter than it had before, less like a borrowed prop, and more like something earned. Then I felt her stare again. I finally looked up. Lucy hadn't moved. Her lips were pressed into a tight line, her jaw tense, but she didn't speak, not a single word. Her silence was louder than any accusation, and sharper than anything she'd ever said to my face. She glared at me from across the table, her fury etched into every line of her expression, but her silence said more than words ever could. Her words stung, but I didn't flinch. I had made my choice. A fork clinked against a plate, then another. A wine glass lifted, touched lips. The room began moving again, cautiously, like waking from a dream no one wanted to admit they'd been in. Conversations trickled back, hushed and awkward. Someone murmured something about the rosemary glaze. Another asked where the rolls had gone, but beneath the small talk, the tension simmered. It lay just under the surface, like a hidden current, pulling at everyone in the room. Lucy was still standing, rigid, unblinking. I felt her watching me, her glare burning between my shoulder blades, but I didn't turn. I buttered a roll and passed the dish. My voice stayed light. My smile stayed steady. It wasn't a performance anymore. It was a decision. I could feel the shift, not just in the room, but in myself. Lucy tried to claw it back. "You know," she said loudly, tilting her voice toward me, "some people really don't understand how to behave in someone else's home." The words were aimed like knives, but I let them fall dull and useless at my feet. I didn't buy. Across the table, a guest raised an eyebrow. Another sipped her wine and looked away. I turned toward the woman beside me. "Would you like another slice?" I asked gently. She nodded, grateful for the escape. Lucy's jaw clenched. She sat down, finally, but not at the head of the table. She slipped into the chair beside David, her posture stiff as iron. Her plate remained untouched. David looked pale, caught in the gravity between two worlds. He shifted in his seat, tool glances at each of us like a referee waiting for the next foul. "You okay?" he whispered, barely audible. I didn't answer, not because I hadn't heard, but because I didn't need to explain myself anymore. The others watched him, watched us, but no one dared interfere. And the longer Lucy stayed quiet, the more her grip slipped. The woman across from me, Janelle, I thought her name was, leaned forward. "This turkey," she said with a warm smile, "is absolutely perfect." I gave a modest nod. "It's mostly Lucy's doing. I just moved it to the right plate." Laughter. "Real this Even David smiled, though it vanished the second Lucy shot him a look. She could feel it too, the unraveling. This wasn't just about dinner. It never had been. It was about control, presence, power. For years, she had defined the rules, shaped the narrative. I was the quiet mother-in-law, grateful for scraps, grateful to be tolerated. But not anymore. She watched me laugh with her guests. Pour wine like it was mine to give. Reclaim space she never intended to Her discomfort grew more visible by the minute, her posture pinched, her eyes darting, her hands trembling slightly, as she reached for her glass, and set it back down untouched. David reached for her hand. She didn't take it. The clock ticked. Dishes were passed. Plates cleared. The night moved forward, but nothing was the same. Every glance, every silence acknowledged it. The guests saw me now, not just as someone's mother, not just a quiet old woman in a cardigan, but a presence. Lucy knew it too. She snapped up from her seat suddenly, the chair legs scraping harshly against the wood. The entire table froze. Her voice came out brittle. "Excuse me." She didn't wait for a response. She walked fast, heels clicking like gunfire down the hallway toward the den. The double doors slammed shut behind her, echoing like a punctuation mark none of us expected. No one followed. No one dared. We all just sat there, the room still and humming with the aftershock. David stared down at his lap. I folded my napkin, calmly, and placed it beside my plate. Lucy was gone, but her absence said everything, and in the silence she left behind, the power had clearly changed hands. I had been patient, kind, and understanding for years. Now I was finally demanding respect. The plates were mostly empty now, the candles burning low. One by one, the guests stood, offered awkward but sincere goodbyes, their eyes darting between me and the closed double doors. Lucy had vanished behind. Some touched my shoulder gently on their way out. Others avoided eye contact altogether. But no one said her name. David lingered at the door, thanking people in a voice that sounded stretched thin. When the last couple left, silence fell again, this time heavier. I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. I stood, gathered the stray napkins, began stacking plates more out of instinct than necessity. "Mom," David said quietly, Could we step outside for a moment? I nodded. The night air was cool, the porch light dim. Crickets murmured softly beneath the hydrangeas. We stood under the eaves like two people stranded between worlds. One we'd both endured, and another we hadn't yet dared imagine. He exhaled, long and slow. She's never reacted like that before. I didn't speak. I let him sit in the discomfort. I know what you're thinking, he added, that I let this go on for too long. You did, I said softly, but I let you. His head dropped, and he gripped the railing like it might anchor him. I didn't want to cause trouble. Lucy, and when she's angry it's like walking on broken glass. You don't have to explain her to me, David. I've been cutting my feet on her edges for years. He looked at me then. Really looked. The first time in years I saw my son's face without a filter of obligation. He looked tired and ashamed. I didn't know how bad it got, he said. You didn't want to know. My voice held no accusation, just truth. You thought silence was keeping the peace, but all it did was protect her. His eyes glossed, but he didn't blink. She talks over me. Always has. Even when I try to speak up, it's like I'm background noise. At some point I just stopped trying. I nodded. You weren't the only one who disappeared. He flinched, and I regretted nothing. I didn't want to choose sides, he said. But by not choosing, I replied. You already did. That landed. He turned away, rubbed his face with both hands. I've been unhappy, he admitted. For a long time, I just didn't know what to do with it. It felt easier to let her run things, because she made you believe you couldn't. He paused, swallowed. Maybe I let her, but tonight, when she stood there and everyone looked at you like you were the one in charge, I saw it. I saw what it looks like when someone refuses to disappear. I said nothing. I let that truth hang in the cool air between us. I've always admired that in you, he added, voice smaller. I just didn't realize it until now. I rested my hand on the railing beside his. You're not a boy anymore, David. You don't need permission to be heard, but you do need to decide who you're going to be. He nodded slowly. I can't fix your marriage, I said, but I won't pretend anymore, and I won't let you pretend either. He met my eyes again. His own were red, raw, exposed. I know you're right, he said. I stepped back, letting the porch light cast a soft glow between us. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then he took a breath, deeper this time. What should I do next? He asked, his voice quiet, but full of something new. And for the first time in years I stood steady, knowing that real change had finally begun. I didn't expect everything to change in one night, but it was clear, I couldn't go back to what I was. The kitchen was quiet when we stepped back inside, the air heavy with the scent of roasted herbs, and the remnants of tension. The dishes were rinsed and stacked, as if the night had politely tried to clean itself up. But the real mess still lingered. David glanced toward the hallway where Lucy had disappeared. His jaw tightened. I need to talk to her. I said nothing. He didn't wait for approval. He walked slowly, almost cautiously, and disappeared into the den. The doors didn't slam this time. They clicked shut with a soft finality. I stood near the counter, letting the cool marble steady me. I didn't strain to hear. I didn't need to. Whatever was said in that room wasn't mine to interrupt. 10 minutes passed. 15. Then the door cracked open. David emerged first. He looked older somehow, like the weight of every unspoken word had finally settled across his shoulders. Lucy followed, arms crossed, face unreadable. Her eyes flicked toward me, but she didn't speak. She grabbed her phone from the island, then her heels tapped once, twice, then stopped. You win, she said flatly. Congratulations. Her voice didn't sting this time. It just sounded hollow. She left through the front door without waiting for a response. No goodbye. No apology. Just exit. David didn't move. I waited. He exhaled, dragged a hand through his hair, and leaned against the kitchen wall. She wouldn't listen, he said. She called it an ambush. Accused me of choosing you over her. I met his gaze. What did you say? I told her she's been choosing for both of us for years. He shook his head. She accused me of being spineless. And for the first time, I didn't disagree. I stepped closer, but not too close. This was still his reckoning to own. She asked if I wanted a divorce. He continued. I told her I didn't know. I told her I couldn't keep living like this, that I needed space and clarity. And she told me to take all the space I wanted. His voice cracked slightly. So I will. We stood in the stillness, no longer afraid of what it meant. I'm not asking you to fix my marriage, Mom, he said, but I need to fix what I broke with you. I've spent too long pretending you weren't hurting, too long letting her define our relationship. His face was open now, vulnerable. He wasn't hiding behind politeness or shame. He was just my son. I've been thinking about therapy, he said quietly, not just for the marriage, for myself, and for us. But I know that's not something I can ask of you unless you want it to. The idea of therapy surprised me, but not because I thought it was weakness, because it was the first time he'd spoken about healing instead of hiding. I took a moment, let the words settle. I'll do whatever it takes, I said calmly, but I won't be disrespected again. And as soon as I said it, I saw something shift in his eyes. Respect, not for the mother he remembered, but for the woman I had finally allowed him to see. Perhaps this wasn't just about Thanksgiving anymore. It was about us healing. If we could. It was the following afternoon when the text came through. Just 3 words. No punctuation. No pleasantries. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long moment, the screen glowing softly in my hand. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just watched those words blink back at me like a challenge. Lucy never texted me unless she had to. Birthday reminders, quick updates about David, logistics for holidays I was barely invited to. But this was something else. It wasn't a dinner invite. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a full sentence. I set the phone down on the counter and walked away. I didn't want to feel what I was feeling. Hope, wariness, the tight swirl of possibility. She could be trying to manipulate me again, wrap this all up in a neat little bow and pretend the turkey, the chair, the silence hadn't happened. But she could also be doing something else. Something I'd never seen her do. Taking responsibility. That evening David called. His voice was cautious but curious. She texted me too, he said. Said she wants to talk to you. Just you. Why now? I asked. He sighed. She didn't say. Just that she wants to clear the air. I let that sit. He waited. Then added. I told her it was your decision. That you don't owe her anything. That mattered. He'd said it like he meant it. But still I hesitated. Not because I was afraid of Lucy anymore. But because I knew the cost of walking into conversations like this unarmed, unguarded, hoping for sincerity and getting barbed wire. I didn't answer. That night, I found myself staring at the text again. I read it over and over, searching for tone in the tone. I reread old messages between us. Terse, polite exchanges that never meant much. I remembered birthdays she'd forgotten, Mother's Days she'd ignored. I remembered every time she pretended I wasn't in the room, and I remembered Thanksgiving night, the table, the silence, the power I had claimed back quietly but permanently. I wasn't who I was before, and maybe that's why this invitation, bare as it was, didn't scare me. The next morning, I stood at the kitchen window, watching steam rise from the sink. The light was soft gray. My hands were wet with soap, but I dried them slowly, deliberately, and picked up the phone. I typed, "Okay, let's talk." I pressed send. Before I could change my mind, her reply came within minutes. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Cafe Rosewood. Just us. Cafe Rosewood was neutral ground. Bright. Public. Just noisy enough to keep voices even and tempers contained. The kind of place where people sipped herbal tea and talked about things that mattered in quiet, careful tones. Of course it was Lucy's choice. Controlled. Composed. Her arena. Still I agreed. When I told David, he blinked. "You said yes?" he asked. I said yes. He searched my face. "You sure?" "No," I said. "But I'm not afraid." His shoulders relaxed a little. That meant something too. That evening, I ironed a blouse I hadn't worn in years, not flashy, but firm, structured. I polished my wedding ring, widowed now, but still my anchor, and laid my keys by the door. Later, before bed, I sat on the edge of the mattress and stared into the dark. I didn't pray for peace. I didn't pray for healing. I prayed for clarity, for Lucy to show me who she really was, and for me to have the courage to respond without shrinking. And as I zipped up my coat, the next morning, I felt it again, not dread, but resolve, because this time, no matter what Lucy said, I wouldn't be silent. This was the hardest conversation I'd ever had, but it felt like it had to happen. Cafe Rosewood was half full when I arrived. Soft jazz played overhead, and the scent of citrus and cinnamon drifted through the air. I chose a table near the back, close enough to the window for light, far enough from others to feel private. Lucy was already there. She looked smaller somehow, seated with her hands wrapped around a mug of chamomile. No makeup, no earrings, just a beige sweater and that tight expression she wore when control slipped just out of reach. She didn't stand. Neither did I. I slid into the seat across from her, unzipping my coat with calm fingers. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just sat in the tension, letting it stretch like something old and brittle between us. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said quietly. I wasn't either, I replied. She nodded, eyes flicking to the side, then back to mine. I don't know how to start this, she admitted. Try the truth, I said gently. Her mouth twisted. Not in anger, more like discomfort. I've been angry for a long time, she said. At everything. At David. At his job. At myself. But I took it out on you. Because you were always there. And I thought, she swallowed. I thought if I controlled everything, I wouldn't lose him. The words weren't rehearsed. They weren't elegant. But they were real. I know, I said after a moment. And I've been scared too. Scared of being pushed out of his life entirely. Scared of becoming a burden. I didn't fight back, because I thought if I stayed quiet, I'd still be welcome, even if it hurt. She looked up at that, really looked at me. There was something raw behind her eyes. Something human. I saw the way he looked at you after Thanksgiving. He used to look at me like that. It hurt to hear, but I didn't flinch. I never wanted to take him from you, I said. I just wanted to be part of his life. Our life. She stared at her tea, fingers tracing the rim. I didn't know how to I thought, if he saw you, really saw you, I'd disappear. That's what I thought too. I admitted. That there wasn't room for both of us. Silence again. But not brittle this time. Softer. Heavier. I've been in survival mode for years, she said. Trying to be perfect. Trying to be enough. But it never feels like it is. And when I felt you watching, it made me feel judged. Like I was failing. I wasn't judging, I said. I was holding my breath. Her lips parted slightly, like that sentence cracked something inside her. We sat in it for a long time. Then carefully she said, I don't know how to fix this. But I don't want to keep doing what we've been doing. Neither do I. She looked down. Then up. Boundaries. She said. Expectations, honest conversations, and space. I added, to be ourselves. She gave a small nod. We weren't hugging. We weren't crying. But something had shifted. A thread had formed. Not strong yet. But there. She picked up her mug. Then set it down again. Maybe, she said softly. Eyes unsure but open. We can try this together. It wasn't a perfect solution. But it felt like the right first step. A week after the cafe meeting, Lucy sent me a photo of a scarf she thought I'd like. No caption. No explanation. Just the image, soft and sage green, folded over the back of a chair. I didn't respond right away, but I stared at it longer than I needed to. It wasn't about the scarf. It was a breadcrumb. The next day I sent her a recipe, David's favorite stew, one I hadn't made in years. She replied with a thumbs up. Then a minute later a question about the spice blend. It was awkward. Slightly clunky. But it was communication. We didn't fix everything overnight. But we started. Lucy began asking if I wanted to be included in decisions, not just invited but consulted. She asked for my opinion about the kids' school projects, the Thanksgiving leftovers, the holiday plans for next year. Nothing earth-shattering, but for the first time I wasn't an afterthought. One morning she called and asked if I'd like to help her with the centerpiece arrangements for an upcoming dinner. Her voice was soft, almost tentative, like she wasn't sure I'd say yes. I said I'd love to. We worked side by side in her kitchen. Floral stems scattered across the counter like fallen confetti. There were silences, but they weren't sharp anymore. They were gentle, comfortable, space to think, to breathe. David came home early that day. When he walked into the kitchen and saw us there, laughing at the way Lucy's tulip kept drooping no matter how she trimmed it, he didn't speak at first. He just smiled. Later he brought in tea for both of us, set the mugs down carefully, and kissed Lucy's temple before turning to me. "Smells like peace in here," he said. We all laughed. That weekend we had dinner again, this time without the crowd, just the three of us. Lucy made pot roast. I brought dessert. David opened wine. The table was smaller, simpler, the conversation lighter. No silent wars, no barbed glances. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments where I caught her hesitating before she spoke, or where David's eyes flicked between us like a referee ready to jump in. But those moments passed, and no one slammed any doors. One night, after Lucy and David dropped me off at home, I sat in the driveway a little longer than usual. I watched them drive away, headlights painting the sidewalk gold, and realized something strange. I missed them already. I walked inside, kicked off my shoes and let myself feel it. This was new. For so long, family had felt like a room I had to knock on. Now finally, it was a room I belonged in. I wasn't just tolerated anymore, I was part of it. My phone buzzed. It was Lucy. "You forgot your scarf," the message read. "I'll bring it next time." Next time. The words caught me. Not an invitation. Not a formality. An assumption of continuation. Of something ongoing. The next morning we all met for brunch. Lucy, David, the grandkid. We sat at a sunny table by the window, the kids passing syrup back and forth while David tried not to laugh at the mess. Lucy leaned over and offered me a bite of her pancake. I took it, just like that. I looked at the table, really looked, the laughter, the tiny gesture, the space I no longer had to fight for. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was trying to belong. I already did. But as I sipped my coffee and watched them all, I couldn't help but wonder, what comes next for us now that we finally found our beginning? It's been weeks since Christmas, and things are different, better, but there's still work to be done. January arrived quietly, without ceremony. The lights came down, the garlands were packed away, and with them a certain kind of magic faded too, not the kind wrapped in ribbons, but the fragile hope that everything might stay as it had felt during those few soft shared moments. Still, something remained, not perfect, but real. Lucy and I texted more often now, recipes, articles, the occasional photo of the kids playing in the snow. She didn't overdo it. I didn't push. It was measured, careful, like walking across a frozen lake. Step, pause, listen. Sometimes we stumbled. Once, I offered to help plan a birthday party for her youngest. She paused too long before saying, "I've already got it under control." I smiled, nodded, didn't press, and sometimes she surprised me. Last week she called, not texted, to ask if I'd like to come help make decorations, just the two of us. We drank tea and cut paper stars at her kitchen island, the scissors clicking in sync like a strange kind of truce. David was different too, present, attentive in ways I hadn't seen since he was a boy. He called more, asked questions, instead of offering rehearsed responses. When Lucy snapped gently, but still habitually, he didn't deflate the way he used to. He stood a little taller now, not combative, just steady. It made a difference, but the cracks were still there. One evening I came over unannounced, only by 10 minutes, and caught them mid-argument. Something about a work trip. Lucy's tone was sharp, David's shoulders tight. When they saw me, they both straightened too fast, the kind of choreography that only comes from years of practice. I told them I'd come back later. David insisted I stay. Lucy forced a smile, but the air never quite cleared. That night, as I walked home under the amber glow of the street lamps, I felt the familiar tug in my chest, the one that whispered, "You don't really belong here," but this time I pushed it back. Because even in that tension, especially in that tension, I had stayed. I wasn't the woman who would slip out the back door anymore. Still, the doubts crept in. Was this who we were now? A family tiptoeing around old wounds, hoping they didn't reopen, or were we learning? One Sunday during brunch, Lucy asked my opinion about something simple, napkin colors for a fundraiser, but she listened, really listened. It wasn't about napkins, it was about space. She was making room for my voice, and David, he watched it happen with quiet pride. The kids began drawing pictures for me again. Grandma's house scrawled in crayon. One of them handed me a card that said, "You're invited to everything." I laughed, hugged her, and almost cried in the hallway. Progress was uneven, but it was up. Some days I still braced for the cold shoulder. Some mornings I still flinched when my phone rang, expecting correction instead of conversation. But more and more it didn't come. I'd sit at the table, sip my coffee, and realize I wasn't holding my breath. One evening I sat curled in my reading chair with a book in my lap, and the TV on mute. Rain tapped at the windows. The fire was low. My phone buzzed once on the armrest beside me. It was Lucy. Just a single line. "Can we start fresh?" I stared at the screen, heart steady, pulse slow, and realized the most surprising thing of all. I was ready to answer. Everything had changed, but the real power, I now knew, lay in my ability to stand up for myself. There was a time when I thought strength meant being quiet, enduring, smiling when it hurt, nodding when I should have said no. I used to believe that was love, being agreeable, being small. That was the only kind of power I thought I could hold. But I know better now. The real power was in presence. Not the loud kind, not the demanding kind, but the kind that fills a room quietly and refuses to disappear. It was in the way I sat at their table without waiting for permission. It was in how I spoke with calm conviction, not spite. It was in my decision to show up as myself, not just someone's mother or someone's problem. And that power had changed everything. David had changed too. He asked more, listened better. He didn't just nod and move on. He engaged. When Lucy and I disagreed, and we still did, he didn't shrink. He didn't mediate with silence. He stayed in it with both of us. It made all the difference. There was a new energy in our family now, one built on intention, sometimes clumsy, sometimes uncertain, but real. I could feel it during simple things, like when Lucy asked me to watch the kids, and then followed up with a genuine thank you, or when David called just to ask how I was, not because he had to but because he wanted to. One afternoon, Lucy and I sat on the porch together, warm tea cupped in our hands, the late February breeze tugging at our sleeves. The sky was soft with low clouds, the kind that made everything feel quieter somehow. She was the one who broke the silence. "You've changed," she said. I turned to her slowly. "So have you." Her eyes were thoughtful but not guarded. "I think I used to believe that respect came from control," she said. "That if I orchestrated everything just right, I'd be safe. But that's not how it works." "No," I said. "It's not." We sat with that for a while. The truth of it, the weight of everything we'd both unlearned. Then gently she set her mug down on the table and turned toward me fully. "I owe you something," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "You don't have to." "I do." Her voice was firmer now. "For a long time I treated you like a threat, like a shadow, and it wasn't I thought pushing you out would make things easier, but it only made everything colder. You didn't deserve that." I froze. Not because I doubted her, but because I never thought I'd hear her say it. "I'm sorry, Martha," she said. "I was wrong. The words settled like snowfall, soft, unexpected, undeniable. For a long moment I didn't speak. I couldn't. Something deep in me, something I'd kept buried under years of trying to be okay, unfolded, like a flower opening to light it never thought would come. And as I looked at Lucy, really looked, I realized I wasn't just hearing an apology. I was witnessing a turning point I never believed I'd live to see. I didn't expect the apology, but it was the beginning of something new. The apology didn't fix everything. It didn't erase the years or soften every edge between us, but it cracked open a door I hadn't realized was still closed, and slowly, carefully, we both stepped through. After that afternoon on the porch, something changed, not just between Lucy and me, but in how we moved through each other's presence. It was in the little things, the way she waited for me to finish my thought before responding, the way I offered to help without assuming I was intruding. Respect didn't arrive all at once. It settled in gradually, like dawn through a sheer curtain. We started collaborating on things, birthday parties, Sunday dinners, even small errands. Nothing groundbreaking, but significant in its simplicity. She asked me to help plan a garden party fundraiser, and when I hesitated she said, "Only if you want to." I'll take no as a full sentence. That line, more than anything, told me she was learning. David noticed it too. "You two have your own language now," he said, one evening, smiling as he watched us argue over flower placements. "I can't decide if it's terrifying or beautiful." "Both," I told him. David, for his part, had started showing up, not just physically, but emotionally. He offered input. He helped manage tension. And when Lucy's frustration bubbled up, because it still did, he didn't disappear into silence like he used to. He stayed. He steadied. It helped. A lot. With spring giving way to early summer, the house began to feel more like a shared space and less like a stage. The grandkids bounced between rooms like sunlight, and for once I didn't feel like I had to earn every minute of their affection. It was just mine. One Saturday, Lucy handed me a bowl of strawberries and asked if I'd show the kids how to make my shortcake. No hesitation, no caveats, just trust. We stood shoulder to shoulder in the kitchen, sticky fingers, flour clouds, and laughter filling the air. I caught her looking at me once, just for a second, like she was watching something settle into place. Later that evening, David lit candles out on the patio, while Lucy poured wine. I brought out the dessert, and we all sat under the soft pink sky, the kind of light that makes everything feel gentle. Lucy raised her glass. "To new traditions," she said. We clinked. We sipped. And something in me exhaled. This wasn't the family I'd imagined in my loneliest hours, but it was better, because it was real, earned, imperfect, and alive. Still, a part of me stayed cautious, not fearful, but realistic. Healing didn't mean forget. It meant learning to carry the past without letting it shape the future. After dinner, the kids went to bed, and David disappeared into the den for a call. Lucy and I stayed behind, watching the flames dance in the outdoor fire pit. She shifted in her chair. "Do you think we're actually doing it?" she asked. "Fixing this?" I smiled. "I think we're finally listening." "That's a start," she nodded, drawing her knees up beneath her. "We've come far," she said. The wind picked up, cool and scented with early blooming lavender. I wrapped my shawl tighter and looked out over the yard, lights twinkling along the fence, a garden hose coiled neatly, toys abandoned on the lawn. For the first time in years I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, but as I looked at Lucy, and then beyond her to the quiet of the night, I couldn't help but wonder, after all we've rebuilt, what happens next? The turkey was just the beginning. Today I sit at the table, my voice finally heard. The dining room looked almost the same as it did a year ago. Same table, same chandelier throwing its warm dappled glow, the same china, the same chairs, but the air, that was different. It hummed with something new. Lucy moved through the kitchen like a conductor, not a commander, calm, focused, flour dusted on her sleeves. David stood beside her, basting the turkey while their youngest balanced on a stool and stole olives from the counter. They didn't snap at each other. They didn't rush. They flowed. "Timer's ready," I said from the sideboard, lifting a dish of roasted carrots. Lucy turned to me and smiled. Genuine, unguarded. Perfect timing. I nodded. And for once I didn't feel like a guest in their home. I felt like part of it. When the table was finally set, the kids scrambled for their seats. David uncorked a bottle of wine, and Lucy ladled gravy into a porcelain boat. No ceremony, no pressure, just small rituals made softer by time. As I settled into my chair, I noticed something subtle. I wasn't at the far end anymore. My place was near the center, between the kids and the adults, where the conversations crossed and laughter spilled freely. I hadn't asked to be moved. No one had mentioned it, but there I was, at the heart. Lucy clinked her glass gently. "Before we dive in," she said, looking around the table. I just want to say thank you to all of you, for showing up, for sticking through the tough moments, for making this family what it is. Her eyes flicked toward mine, and especially to you, Martha. You've taught me more than you probably realize. I felt the room turn toward me, all soft smiles and quiet admiration. I swallowed the lump in my throat, and reached for my water instead of speaking. Some truths didn't need words. They were already understood. We passed dishes hand to hand. The turkey was juicy. The stuffing had cranberries this year. My touch, Lucy's idea. The kids made place cards with glitter and glue. David told a joke so bad we all groaned in unison. It was noisy, and a little chaotic, but it was whole. At one point I leaned back slightly, letting the laughter rise around me like steam. I saw Lucy tuck a strand of hair behind her ear and reach for David's hand. I saw him squeeze it without looking. I saw the kids clink their juice cups like tiny royals, and I realized I wasn't bracing anymore. Not for judgment, not for silence, not for the ache of being forgotten. I wasn't holding my breath. This was peace, not the kind that comes when nothing's wrong, but the kind that comes when you know you'll survive whatever. After dessert, pecan pie with too much whipped cream, I helped Lucy load the dishwasher, while David handled bedtime stories. We moved in sync, humming under our breath, bumping elbows and laughing softly when a fork slipped down the drain. Can I tell you something? Lucy asked, drying her hands on a towel. Of course. She looked over her shoulder, then faced me. This is the first time I've felt like Christmas wasn't performance, just family. I smiled. It shows. We finished the dishes, then stepped onto the porch with 2 mugs of tea. The night was crisp, the stars sharp above us. From inside we could hear the soft thrum of lullabies and the gentle creak of a rocking chair. I think we're doing okay, she said. We are. She hesitated. Do you think it'll last? I didn't answer right away. Instead I looked at the house behind us, the flicker of candles on the windowsill, the faint trail of laughter still echoing in my ears. I think it will, I finally said, because now we know how to fight for it. We stood there, quiet, breathing in the night, and for the first time in a long, long while, I felt the story settle, not end, not close, but soften into something enduring. And as I took one last sip of tea, I knew deep in my bones, I had found my place and I would never lose it again.